All right. Good evening, everyone. Ooh, it got awfully quiet. Hi, everyone. My name is Joël Leondani. I am the Executive Director of the Toronto Society of Architects, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to a really special keynote event with our friends from MVRDV. So first, give them a big round of applause. And how many of you are familiar with the TSA? Just raise your hand. Everyone. We kind of knew. That's great. I don't have to explain who we are. I think this is a first. I don't know what to do now. I guess we just jump into the lecture itself. But yeah, so well, thank you all for coming and for supporting events like this. We are always looking for new ways of learning and bringing people together, and we have such a wonderful community here in Toronto. And when MVRDV reached out and said, we're going to do a lecture, at first we were talking about like, oh, there's like space at 401 Richmond, maybe with the exhibit. And I'm like, not big enough. We need a bigger space. So thank you as well to Daniels for hosting us today and making this space possible. It is a really great facility that we get to use today, and we really couldn't do it without Daniel's support. So a big thank you to Daniels. All right. A little bit of housekeeping that I want to cover. So today's event will be 2 hours long. We will start with about an hour of presentations by Nathalie and Sanne, and then we'll follow by, I'm sure, a really great discussion with Alex as well for about 30, 40 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to the floor for Q&As from the public, so we'll have lots of opportunities. For those of you who are still looking for your climate action hours for the OAA, this event is exactly the 2 hours you need, and it's climate action. So great choice. We will make sure, and if you checked in with our volunteers or our staff, you will get this as long as you stay for the duration of the event. If you have not signed in yet, though, make sure to chat with Rebecca and Renee, and they can help you out. Make sure we got your email. And just give us a couple of days to get these certificates to you, but you'll have it before the end of the Con Ed deadline, so no need to panic. If you're looking for the washrooms, they are just down this hallway and to the left. You'll be able to find them, and we have some volunteers roaming around. If you can't find things, just ask our very friendly TSA volunteers who are happy to give you a hand. Okay, so before we dive into the lecture and I ask our first speaker to join us up, I want to take a minute to recognize the land on which we are gathering. For thousands of years, this has been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe. Today, Toronto is home to many Indigenous nations, including Métis, Inuit, and Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. I think today's lecture really underlines the importance of understanding that reconciliation is also understanding that nature is part of reconciliation, and how we treat our planet, our plants, our fauna are all part of reconciliation. And we have a lot of work to do in the built environment to rectify what we have done, but also to create a joint future together. June is Indigenous History Month in Canada. So I hope you take an opportunity anytime in June to learn a little bit more about the Indigenous people of Canada, the rich histories and traditions, and the knowledge that they have to share with us. If you are looking for a really great event to go to, last year I had the opportunity to go to the sunrise ceremony that we do at City of Toronto, Nathan Phillips Square, on June 21st, National Indigenous Peoples Day. Really amazing event to be able to do it. And right after, there's another ceremony held at Bidasige Park, which now has a space that is precisely built for these ceremonies. And it's a really great way of starting on your path of learning more about Indigenous traditions here in Canada. So with that said, I now want to invite our speakers, Nathalie and Sanne, to start us off.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, it's great to hear that you already start to get credit points because That's exactly what we intended to do with our traveling exhibition called Carbon Confessions. It's usually surrounded by all kinds of talks and discussions with our colleagues and interested others. So today I'm going to tell, because actually Carbon Confessions, it's of course the confessions of our office, MVRDV, about the things we did and we have done. And I'm the older one here. started the company, one of the founders. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the beginning and about our intentions in the past years and what led to what we want to talk to you about today. It's interesting to see that such a traveling exhibition and the program around it sort of adapts itself also to the situations that we are in, and we're very, very glad that afterwards we can have a talk about that us as Dutch or European architects, do we see things differently? Do we have different language? Do we have different ideas about how to deal with this, or is it more like an international, global thing? Carbon Confessions. So, Urban Space Gallery is the exhibition, and here is we have to stop sharing something, I think. All right, thanks. So here's a sneak peek of this exhibition. There's a lot of projects, a narrative on what we have been doing, our story into learning about what we can do about carbon. So I'm going to talk about, in the first part, Sanne van den Burgh, also here, my colleague, will talk about the second part. So when I thought about how to give this lecture, I also have to see what I'm actually talking about. So I hope maybe I have to stay a bit here and see the image as well. I like to make this kind of little bullet point list. I think in the beginning of our office, we talked a lot about sustainable growth and density, and how can we play a role in that with our architecture. It was already dealing a lot with numbers and systems, and trying to prove that within the same systems and data and parameters, we could do things differently and have a joyful life again as architects, and not just following prototypes and economic models. And then we see a shift, which roughly happened about 10 years ago, also influenced us a lot. And so the second part of my part will be about what it did to the projects that we were making after that. So I think one of the most important things for our office that really started us already is how do we build and how do we densify? Because we knew 30 years ago when we started our office, 30-something years ago, that we had to deal with this growth and have to find agreeable ways of densification. And we tried to actually prove as much as possible. And it led in the year 2000 to this pavilion for the Netherlands, in that we believed in densifying, we believed in cities, but we also believed that we could optimize the use of our lands and of our buildings much more. So the Netherlands rented a huge part, a plot to build a really huge pavilion in our neighboring, most important economic partner, Germany's World Exhibition. And then we said, well, we want to prove that we do not use so much land anymore. We can pile up the land. So we chopped the land in as many floors as this building has. So it's actually a representation of the area of the exhibition site of the Dutch pavilion. Put it on top of each other and try to show it as a kind of cycle where we said we can have energy, we can raise energy with our buildings, we can collect the water, then the water can come down, and we could start to create forests on the 5th floor, and we could green our roofs. Then it can trickle down, and then we can recycle the water even further and fertilize our agriculture. There were pots and plants down there. It's even literally showcased here. Et cetera, and then we clean the water that we have used again, and it gets pumped up again, and we're going to recycle it again. Vertical landscapes, just to represent to ourselves that our sprawling country, our ever growing amount of agriculture, but also this, at the same time a demand for more housing, more other activities. It had to find a way, it had to find a place, and maybe if we hybridize that, put it together, integrate it with each other, we could do that, you know, and we wouldn't have battles for area and land and livability. It could be done at the same time. It could maybe even be done in our cities and not just on the outside. So here it is. Here you see these plots and the site put on top of each other. And believe it or not, in the year 2000, people were standing in a row to go into a building with a forest on the 5th floor. And even some of the tree trunks were really used as a structure as well. So, and to put windmills on the building, it was exciting. But it also shows a little bit that, yeah, we thought it was really interesting to showcase with this pilot architectural building, to show a potential future way of building and living. And I also call it an open structure, because of course we also show that you can put all kinds of different things on top of each other if you think about flexible and open and exciting structures as well. And that is of course something that most of you who are designing also know already, of course, from when you start to reuse existing buildings, how warehouses, for example, and in this case an old cement factory can be very nicely used. And if you do that in a way that you get this infills, in a kind of Stewart brand kind of way. You can also do it in a flexible way, you can do it in an affordable way, and you can do it in a way that can be transformed again. So this is actually learning from renovating, but yeah, maybe this is also one of the ways, this open building structures, to go ahead, to make yeah, big floors, a way of building that is efficient, that you can reuse again, you can reimagine again, and you have to find architecture, architectural elements and aspects. And it's sometimes mostly interiors, it's floor heights, it's infills as we used it, and then they could be fun. In this building in Munich, we even freed up the complete interior from the core and the staircases and the elevators, put that all on the outside of the building as well, just to prove that we can have like super open and flexible structures. And then, yeah, the elements you put in there, they give the life and the atmosphere and the special, yeah, feeling to the building, give character to the building as well. And this artist even embraced that by using this sort of comic book, yeah, you know, Donald Duck says, ooh, and ah, and he put that all around the building. And wow, which is it's a great art piece, of course. So how to make architecture attractive, even if it's in a sort of very bare state, you could say. Hey, what can you do to sell that actually and to make that popular? And it worked, because it became a building of the year in Germany. So Germans love this part and architecture as well. Now, like I said, we always like to be a bit exemplary as well. I always make a joke that this is our first Canadian building, and it's standing in Colombo, because I recently revealed also to Alex that I was here many years ago, and I gave one interview to him in a newspaper, and Rachid Moussaïe, a businessman living not far from Toronto, read that, and he said, well, my family business, my family, my father owned a small factory here. We're using the lands to build some new things. Would you like to be my architect? Because I read the article and I thought, that's the person I need. So then you suddenly have to transplant your ideas to other culture, to another place. And when I talk about openness, I mean, we all know, of course, that this is an office building, commercial office building. That is, yeah, what is a commercial office building? It's floors, columns, roof, and an interesting facade, and maybe a good lobby. So this openness there, we started to have the conversation about climate, and I said to him, well, Sri Lanka is famous for its verandas. Let's get some openable parts in the building. Like, are you kidding? It's very hot here. I cannot lease these offices if they're not air conditioned. But I managed to mitigate that, and we compromised. And we also have verandas enclosed parts in the building. And the second thing that I came across is that. And in hindsight, that was actually very good. He said, well, I want to make the car park above ground. It's very more expensive to make it underground. He made one layer, I think, underground. But there was also 2 upstairs. And I said, well, cars, who needs cars? Nathalie, we're in Colombo. A lot of people here still have cars. So when I have an office building, I need parking space as well. And again, we agreed to create it, make it higher floors, and pretend on the outside it's already ready to become an office. And I believe that in the meantime, he has indeed already transformed one of these floors into office again. So I'm just saying that, this idea of the open structure and the open building, you can take it with you to many commissions. And this transformability is sometimes you have to discuss with your clients. But even in the simplest of buildings, it's an attitude. The second part, I'm only in the first part yet, and I only have half an hour to talk. Sanne also needs some time. So open structures also helped us to solve another issue that is coming very contemporary again. Mixed income, mixed use buildings for many different types of people with many different types of backgrounds. How can you do that? And we imagined, okay, well, everybody needs their own type of house. Let's design a very clever structural system in which we can, so it's only these walls, 2 shafts, and the rest can be used and filled in many different ways with many different floor plans, and you can suddenly house people who rent an affordable apartment and people who have penthouses, and they're all in the same building. And also this principle of playing with the topology and looking for diversification, even if it's the same program, is something we've been continuing to do also in this part conversion, part new buildings for housing in the Netherlands. Also, different types of incomes in one project. I like that a lot. There's a lot of discussions going on about that. And I think that's good. We need a society in which people live together. And not segregated. In France, they still do this as well, another project. You also see here again, this one building in Amsterdam was a block built in the water. That's already, that's how high the tension was already in the Netherlands in the 2000s to find places to build. We're upping the program. We're making everything bigger. So we see it as one of our tasks to make this densification somehow acceptable and agreeable, creating little hills of housing with nice views and balconies and views across. Again, every type of person can find homes here. And it continues. Now we did it in the States as well. This is in San Francisco block, where we also mix incomes again, also houses for affordables, the red one here. And mixed communities also, mixed use, not just housing, not just offices, but putting it all together, let public space work, create semi-public spaces, even if you build a lot of homes, make it accessible through share facilities, all things that we think are important to optimize. We also see that our buildings start to become fatter and deeper and higher, so more. I mean, let's say in the beginning of my career, I was still sort of in control of making a form, a shape, a building. Now I'm filling envelopes to the max, and it's just a bit fighting back and finding openings. But still, I think it's worth it if you can do that and bring in more affordable homes here in Boston as well. So this is a model with Tishman Speyer working for, in this case, an enterprise research campus, lands that belong to Harvard University. In the previous one, it was parking lots of the San Francisco Giants. So you see sort of societal interest in sustainable densification, I would say, socially sustainable densification, figuring out in a massive form if you can make these apartments more interesting by adding corners and edges and making the floor plans attractive. Right up to a recent project that we won in New York, and I'm not allowed to show any images yet. Same sort of half affordable and mid-income and some more expensive apartments, adding it right into the downtown of Manhattan. It's happening, and you see everywhere city governments working on it. Last thing from the early stages, is hybridization of program. Now, I'm standing here at an architecture faculty. I'm also talking to you a little bit like as if I'm speaking. I'm also teaching at Technical University of Delft. This is also an important aspect. I'm actually teaching public building there. I'm talking about public building, almost everything except housing. And I think this is a very aspect of contemporary buildings. It's how we deal with functions. So monofunctionality, monofunctional types, for many different reasons, it's more and more disappearing. I mean, and I think that's also a good thing, because it also means that buildings can absorb more program, can be used longer, can contribute back to the city they are in. And this is a definition I took from this book. So it's not mixed use. It's often confused with mixed use, like many different programs in one building. No, we're really talking about overlapping functions, new spaces that emerge, things can happen that you might not know that could happen. And I think that's an important aspect of contemporary building, to take that into consideration as well, especially for public buildings. And this is, for example, a neighborhood center we made in Copenhagen. And the Danish said, it's Danish, bevægelse, that's movement, cultuur, that's obvious, and sundhed, which is health. We want to blend that in one building, healthy body, healthy mind, everything together. Can you make us a building in which all these things can happen, but you also merge, blend, and so we made just a bit like with the housing, a building with many different rooms and spaces that could house different activities. But just as important as the rooms are also the spaces in between. So they're used for play and fun. As you can see here, there's some children hanging above the lobby. And the building is used in day and night and in the weekend, and in different ways and for different groups and for different people. It also relates back to the outside and the landscape. So this is a building in which actually there are a lot of spaces, but none of them are very particularly determined. And like putting different types of people with different types of financial backgrounds, let me put it in that way, in one building, it's also important that people from neighborhoods that are gentrifying, for example, with affordable homes and new homes, and you know, cities like Copenhagen gentrify super rapidly, that they can also see each other and meet each other and hang out in this building. So whenever you go there, if it's during the day or the night or the weekend or when it's winter or when it's summer, different things can happen there, and it put all kinds of functions together as well. You can play there, do your startup of your office, eat, etc. Another hybrid is this depot building, for example. It's a depot, but it's also a bit of a museum. So in a very small space, in a vertical sense, you can walk through that building and you can look into the depots, and then you suddenly create a situation of exhibition, but also showcasing what is happening. They are archiving, they are restoring, they are making temporary exhibitions. You see the whole culture of your city, in this case owned by the city of Rotterdam, stored in a huge depot, but it's also visible and accessible. Of course, we use the roofs as well. And I think that a building we're going to make here in Toronto, which is the addition to the medical faculty, a new wing, together with Diamond Schmidt, two-row architects, and the landscape of Michael van Valkenburg, is also something something which is a change of faculty and university buildings. Now, a medical faculty, this is the extension of a medical faculty, is quite particular. It has a lot of laboratory spaces, and arts and science spaces are in here as well. But we also wanted to add much more publicly accessible spaces at the lower levels, not just us, of course, but the university as well. Meaning that university buildings, and it's super good to see this happening here tonight, for example, that these kind of things, you can, of course, expand the thinking about that. What if the plinth and the lower levels of university buildings stay accessible for the students in the evening? Maybe events are happening there. That's a different use of that building than it's just standing there and it's closed. Also in the daytime, I think students like to hang around more at universities, go to the libraries, don't want to stay in their rooms, want to meet each other, or be in a space where you are not tempted to use your phone all the time, but also universities, schools opening up. So this is what we try to do here. And so that means that we had big discussions with each other also about the amount of accessible and semi-accessible and semi-open areas as well. And we learned, we went on excursions in the Netherlands, and we all know maybe that there are fantastic examples, for example, in Australia as well. It's a transformation of university buildings going on. I think in the Netherlands they, probably not for the medical faculties, but we don't even build faculties anymore. We just build multi-user buildings, multi-faculty buildings actually. It's also about efficiency of usage of spaces, of course, but what is an architectural community? This definition is changing, and it will also be a place where the convocation takes place. It's also a space, for example, that we make in very close collaboration and talks with two-row architectures to get the references there as well. Which is also very nice here in Canada to be able to indeed think in a more holistic way. And meeting each other is important as well. So here are the only images that I can show you so far, working on it, in progress. Second part of my, and I have to talk even faster, is the after 2015, 16 period. So you could say our office started in the 90s. We were getting slightly cynical in those days. It was a time of neoliberalism, ultra-economization of our buildings. It was like boring as well, sprawling, the highway office buildings emerging, big malls were everywhere. And slowly you sort of, especially after the 2008 crisis, saw also a bit of a shift, sort of a loss of trust in globalization, as it were. So what's the true intentions there? And then, Sanne will talk much more about that. I think something really happened when the Paris Accords and the pledge to see how can we turn back the fact that our temperatures are rising and rising. We can't turn that back, but how can we diminish that? We could start to label that as well as building industry being a huge part of impact of carbon emission, of the ones that emit carbon and have an impact on climate. So this awareness growing. Also frustration growing. Again, Sanne will talk more about that, and it's also what the Carbon Confessions lecture is about. So on the one hand, what does climate change do? It gives, for example, sea level rise. So we're already thinking about working with and around effects of climate change. So for the city of Vancouver, and this is the False Creek, and you see under the dark blue you see land. So this is a prediction if there would really be a huge storm and you would do nothing about protecting against the sea. So you see that actually, of course, they built in the water first, and now we are surprised that that's also in the Netherlands, of course, that the water comes back. But what can you do? There's so many investments, there's so many things made, so many people living there. We built highways, industries, everything happening in floodplains, and enormous amounts of cities all around the world are actually having to deal with this sea level rise. It's not just an exotic exercise, this, and you think, oh, 2100, who cares? No. And we also, it sort of happens sometimes in, already small floodings take place, and the question we asked ourselves, and that we also asked ourselves that in the Netherlands, is can we build ever higher dikes and walls, or can we start to live with the water? And I think in Vancouver they started a very clever process of talking to the community, talking also to a lot of involvement of First Nations, people who originally lived on these lands, to see what can we do to live with this effect. And so we started to think in gradients, advice on slow transformation and adaptation of buildings. So interesting also again in regards of carbon. If we don't like something, do we demolish it? Or can we adapt it? Can we adapt to climate change? Can we transform existing buildings? And in how far should we go? And how much money should we still invest in places that we know will not be sustained in times of water level rising, which are up and coming. So how can we maybe create completely new typologies that, so now on the one hand you have to withdraw and maybe transform buildings, but on the other hand you can also add stuff again, stuff that lives with water and with the tides. So, and then we don't, what we always like to do is offer options. That's a magical word in our office. And I think that's also good that we have options. So we don't believe so much in the architect who says this is right and this is wrong. But we do believe in that we say, well, what if we imagine that our coastal areas are zones with different tidal conditions and that we adapt the way we build to those zones? And that also we have to learn over time how this will develop, and maybe things go faster and maybe things go a bit slower. But we can get on this path. We can, first of all, is recognition that these things are happening. We can start to protect the things that are already under threat, and from that learn, and then take an adaptation pathway in climate design. So you see here how slowly but surely shorelines will transform. It's important as architects that we can use our tools like drawing, thinking of new topologies, imagining new imagery, help to take those steps forward. And secondly, we're also started to experiment with different ways of constructing. Like, I don't know, everybody knows there's this thing called completely circular building, as in completely demountable again. So we actually managed to make one of these buildings. We always say this. It's one of these concepts that's around there. It's a way maybe to go forward. In this case, the owner of the site says, "I'm only having a lease for 40 years, so make me a building that I can take apart again." And in the Netherlands, there's a registry system for building materials called Madaster, officially. Where people can start to add all the information about what they have put in a building. I mean, right up until the last screw. And if you, of course, want to then reuse it, it also has to be made completely demountable. So it's possible, a way to, because otherwise it's not really useful to make circular buildings, I guess, because in 30 years you have no clue anymore what got in there. And so this building, it's a science building on the campus in Amsterdam, with labs and startups, and it's bicycle storage in it. It's a meeting place. It's also a social space. Like in the buildings we're making here in Toronto, it also has this sort of double bill of getting the university and research community and starting businesses together. And also we started to continue on our pathway of urban densification with different types of buildings. Different architects are in a master plan. Like I said, the buildings get bigger and taller. This is next to the North Station of Brussels. And we made two 2 of the towers we are also the architects of, and this is the moment when we actually started to apply some of our new ideas and the developments that Sanne also talked about, because we actually started to think about what if we make the construction different. So what if it's a housing and an office tower? What if we really start to apply our ideas about carbon, about the knowledge that as building industry and as architects we're the biggest emitters of carbon. What is the impact of that on all these tall buildings that we are making? And of course we also said they have to be transformable again. You recognize a certain modularity. The offices could be turned into homes as well. The floor plans of the homes might be changeable. The elevations we designed in such a way that you can take out frames and replace them with other ones, because they might be have to be taken out sooner than the rest of the building. We started to have a discussion with the client on the materials for the facade and the nature, the weight, the use of carbon there, and we ended up not with natural stone, but actually a composite material, which also weighed less, so that had an impact on the building. But we also started to talk about structure, because we know now that the structure is one of the biggest heavy hitters in producing carbon in architecture. And if you can change something in the structure, you can really fundamentally change something in the carbon emission. Your building becomes lighter. Same happens, of course, if you have different facade materials. And actually, we managed to make the office part of the building in a hybrid structural system. So what we're going to do there, that's the part of the facade, is in this left tower not give it concrete floors, but wooden CLT floors. And therefore, the building can be much lighter. The housing tower could be constructed in the same way, except we discovered it's also with mixed income that according to Belgian regulations, it would have to be completely sprinklered, and then that made the building start to become too expensive, and the houses would become too expensive. But we're on it, so we start now to imagine this new way of, we have these demountable buildings, now we have these hybrid structures coming up. These facades that can be interchanged, these new images of the building of the future. And Amsterdam has a fully circular, has made a pledge to become a more circular city, is asking now developers to really make fully wooden tall buildings as well. So we can now actually start to find out what that means if we build wooden housing towers. Same for efficiencies of roofs and facades. We promote usage of roofs by manifestations again, like in 2000. Now in Rotterdam, every year people move up to rooftops and understand there's a fifth elevation. No, it's not a fifth elevation, it's an extra floor. And you can do many things with that. You can also actually discover there are existing roofs that you could reuse, like car park roofs on malls. And what if you give daylight to a mall? Whoa. That is, then it suddenly connects with the context as well. And again, the catalog to inspire and to come up with own ideas. Experiments with facades as well, bio-based materials. Is that good? We don't know, but we're trying. No, it's really exciting. So a built laboratory, you could say, where we make nature-inclusive facades. Different typologies of housing in here, green roofs, solar panels on the roofs, and it's under construction now. We reuse wood. We have bio-based materials, recycled concrete, recycled tiles and bricks. And this is, I don't know the English word, rammed earth, of course, rammed earth facade. You name it, we've got it in this project, and we're gonna try it all. And Amsterdam is doing that. And then, if you have a facade, why not raise your energy, not just on your rooftop, but do it in facades as well, which we will do here. Sami school, it's now called the Myron and Burgh Garden Health Center, Health Science Complex, together with Diamond Schmidt architects. Again, we're making another mini version, a really nice faculty with laboratory buildings for health sciences. Under construction right now, you can see it. It's all what I call multiplicity in design. Multiplicity meaning it's not just a facade, you can do extra things with it. It's not just a roof, there's more about it. It's not just a program, you can hybridize it. It's not just a structure, but it can be used in the future as well. And so this building also has, again, this sort of double, triple idea. The idea that it's a good building for science and research, it's a good building for students, but it's also a building in which we will try to sort of revive the neighborhood, the neighboring ravines, and take that feeling back into the building, make places where people can meet. It's also an area where medical services, underserved with medical services, so that means that what the students are doing, also local community can use medical facilities in the building, which is also, I think, a super double use. This type of drawings, Sanne will talk about more, but let's say with the solar facade, the atrium, and the green, and all the things we try to do as best as we can, and give... Yeah, it's an interesting discussion always with client, because basically these type of spaces, they exist and they don't exist in the program. They're called corridors, and yeah, they're called corridors basically. But you can also do other stuff with those places. So here we are, and here we were, and here we are doing things, but now we want to take other steps, and this is why we are here, to talk to you about our carbon confessions. So a couple of years ago, I talked with Sanne about, yeah, we try to do our best. We don't always understand what exactly it is what we're doing. We don't always understand these labels that we're trying to get to our buildings. We don't always understand how we can convince our clients to take an extra step or not turn back measurements which we think are necessary. We do know a lot about digital design. We know how to work with parameters. But this sustainable thing, why don't we get that somehow under control? And then Sanne and her team took on that challenge. Sanne, I'm giving the floor to you. Sanne is one of our directors, and she's leading the research group of our office, MVRDV. Thank you, Sanne. Oh. Almost made it.
Thank you, Nathalie. I'm just going to reorganize the stage a bit so I can move around a bit. Yeah, thanks, Nathalie. Hey, super nice to be here tonight, and fantastic that you're with so many people to listen to my part of the story. I'll be quick, and I'm going to talk about our journey through the world of sustainability. And as Nathalie just explained 5 years ago, Nathalie approached me and said, yeah, Sanne, this sustainability, how can we approach this? How can we make it more specific, more explicit? How can we become sustainable? And yeah, as Nathalie said, I'm the Director of Research and Innovation at MVRDV, and I think I have the coolest job in the entire office, because I get to ask these questions about what is sustainability, because it's a very broad term, right? It could mean a lot of different things. And I'm going to talk about our deep dive that we've done in the past 5 years of the history of MVRDV. We always have been very invested in sustainability. You know, we had social sustainability, we were busy with densification, and we said we want to be 100% sustainable. But we didn't know what that meant. So we became vegetarians, we had an LGBTQIA+ network, and we had a women's network, and we were recycling our coffee grounds, and we were, counting our printing paper. So we thought, we do everything we can to be sustainable. But yeah, at the same time, we were also working with recycling things, right? That's something that you always think about when you talk about sustainability. So we were building facades out of old beer bottles for super luxurious brands, like here for Bulgari. And we were using fish nets from the ocean, and we transformed those into 3D printed modules for Tiffany. So we thought, let's make the super luxury brands fall in love with waste as a material. So that worked, and as Nathalie showed, we also looked at recycling or not recycling our own buildings. This building, yeah, it's super flexible, so it could last maybe for 500 years because you can endlessly reconfigure it. And this building can be completely disassembled. So playing with lifespans and recycling was something that we were very much busy with. We started a Green Dream Foundation that offsets the carbon of our flights. Oh yeah, here are the coffee grounds. We even had a green wall in our garden. We even had a bird in our green wall. And all this was great because we thought we're really on our way to become 100% sustainable. We even hired sustainability consultants that told us to work with the United Nations SDGs. I don't know if do you guys know this? Yeah. And I found it very difficult to work with these things because they're made for countries, not for architects. And yeah, what do you do then? These guys, yeah, you have to use the SDGs, but how? Don't know. So then what we started to do was this. We had sections of our buildings, and then we were putting these SDG icons on there. You know, it's inclusive, and we flush the toilet with rainwater, and we have a heat pump, and solar panels, of course, and now we're very sustainable. We also got the feeling that, you know, is this it? Is this it? Putting these icons and telling ourselves that we have a heat pump and solar panels, and you know, it's inclusive, and we have a gender-neutral toilet. But at the same time, we were still building and designing like this, business as usual. And that could mean that this is the market hall in Rotterdam, and this is an image from a Netflix documentary. Yeah, my house in Rotterdam is 4 meters below sea level, and this could be our future if we continue pasting SDG icons on our sections and kind of greenwashing our own buildings. And this is why we have this exhibition here. It's a very honest exhibition because it's about, you know, sustainability is also very much marketing and branding, and it became a business in a way. And what we are doing here is we are sharing what we did in the past and what our insights are. And we started to look at ourselves critically. And we looked at Rome and Paris, two lovely cities, and they both give us a very clear warning. The Club of Rome told us 50 years ago that our current behavior is not sustainable. And in 2015, we had the Paris Agreement, signed by 196 member states to limit global warming to maximum 2 degrees. And yet 2024 was the hottest year ever since we started measuring. And the author of the Paris Agreement, Christiana Figueres, actually calls our current course suicidal. And we as the building industry are responsible for 39% of greenhouse gas emissions. So we are a very dirty industry, and we realize that we are part of the problem, and we want to become part of the solution. And a lot of these discussions about sustainability are very much about circularity, the circular economy, and the carbon CO2 emissions. They come in modules. They come in compartments. And what you see here is actually carbon over time. All these stories about recycling and circularity, they're in the future. You know, somewhere in the future, someone might reuse something, or maybe, I mean, when we have our demountable building, when it's time to demount it, I'm dead, and I have no idea if the next generation understands what they can do with it. So this is very speculative. A lot of discussions about net zero are about energy. And of course, energy is also very important. Buildings consume energy. But what discussions are very little about is about embodied carbon, which is the carbon that's locked up in the materials, the concrete, the cement, the steel, and the fuels we burn to produce those. And that's why we at MVRDV decided to focus on what we can control, what our sphere of influence is, and that is what we design and draw every day, and that's embodied carbon. That's where our biggest influence lies. And of course, energy is important, and I always show this diagram to explain it. This shows the carbon emissions of a typical residential building in the Netherlands over 75 years. And on the right-hand side, you see that red rectangle. That is the amount of carbon that this building has emitted over its entire lifetime in heating, cooling, appliances. On the left-hand side, you see a rectangle more or less the same size. That's all the carbon that's emitted before you have the key to the building. So this shows the enormous impact of the embodied carbon in buildings. To illustrate it even more, I talk to people that are ashamed of flying, don't dare to fly anymore, but 1 square meter of new business as usual construction equals my flight here from the Netherlands. So it puts things in perspective, and it shows that we can have a massive impact if we get it right. And well, the embodied carbon discourse, we found it quite complicated when we first started to look into it. And why is it complicated? Well, we work all over the world, which is fantastic, because we get to see practices, rules, regulations in all different countries. And we also get to learn what's happening in all these different countries. And different countries have different regulations, different standards. I love the Toronto Green Standard. But yeah, different cities and countries have their own rules and regulations. And this, for example, just shows Europe, even and per country, the legislation is completely different. We have different metrics, different things to achieve. We have different ways of measuring different countries. Some countries measure things over 50 years or 75 years, or they only look at energy, or they look at the whole life carbon. So that makes any kind of comparison between buildings in different countries very challenging. And to illustrate that further, this is the Market Hall in Rotterdam. If I pick up this building, I don't change anything, I pick it up, I put it in Sweden, Swedish Market Hall. It performs much better, which is super strange because I didn't change anything. And this is just because of the way the Swedish count square meters. So that shows that we're comparing apples with oranges. And you can't really look at any number of a building without knowing what is included in this number, what's the method, what is this made of. To make it even more complicated, these are just some benchmarks, milestones, targets from different countries in Europe when it comes to their, let's say, Paris Agreement targets. So we have the LETI from the UK, the RIBA Climate Challenge, we have the French with the RE 2020, we have some BRIA, we have some Dutch things in there, and it shows that everything is different, even the tipping point. So what is the common language? What is the common denominator? And what are we aiming for? Also, I thought, Europe, it's kind of a patchwork, but also in the US, things are widely dispersed, and it's very difficult to find any kind of consistency in this. Then, whenever I'm at conferences or universities specifically, people love talking about data. And these discussions can get very confusing. And at a certain point, I was sitting and listening to something, and then I thought, we just love talking about data. But to illustrate this, people always ask me, what kind of database should we use? Because, one database is different from the other. And this is completely true. There's many different environmental databases in the world. And none of them are complete. They're all structured differently. Some or most of these are behind paywalls or linked to software. So we're kind of selling numbers to try and solve the climate crisis with numbers, like if numbers are going to reduce our emissions. Just an example, if this is a building that we have currently under construction, the largest residential building in the Netherlands. If I use database number 1, my carbon emissions are at 1,000 kilos of carbon per square meter, but I just use a different database. I don't change anything about my building, and then look, I win the Very Sustainable Award because I just found some better numbers. And this is how people think. This is actually happening in the discourse. I just look for a better database, and then I have a good number, and then I'm super sustainable. So we're fooling ourselves. And also, these databases, this database has like 1,000 concretes. And if I'm an architect, I'm doing a competition in China or wherever, I don't know what kind of cement I'm going to use. And that's why this is really not meant to design. How do you design with this? I can't. So that's why we said we need less data, not more. And then the last reason why it's also complicated is the current methods to do something with embodied carbon. I don't know. How many of you have ever done an embodied carbon calculation? Oh, this is, yeah, I know you. Yeah, you see. That's actually like, yay. That's quite a lot. Good for you. Fantastic, respect. Did you enjoy the experience? Was it useful? Okay. Well, what we see is that if you have to do an embodied carbon calculation, you actually need to have quite a lot of information with the current methods. For example, one-click LCA, you need to have quite a lot of information before you can say anything. So all the decisions have been made, you're out of time, you're out of money, and then you get a number. But you can't really trace this number back, so what can you do with it? It's kind of too late. We can't really steer or design with these things. So it's complicated. We have data confusion. We have different rules, regulations. We are comparing apples with oranges, and information comes too late. So that's where we said, oh God, can we please simplify this? We need something that gives us the ability to say something about embodied carbon from day one of the process. We need something that is not a calculator. We need something that helps us design with embodied carbon based on a napkin sketch. So this was our big challenge that we started 5 years ago. So let's make a tool, a version 1. Well, this was our first wild experiment, so we started with an Excel tool. It kind of worked, but it was, well, as you can see, very unexciting and also difficult to share. It did something, but it didn't do what we wanted. So then we said, let's make another tool, and then we actually made an entire Grasshopper plugin, which we actually completely made, all of it. And then we said, okay, now we can finally start to design with it, you know? So we had working on different options and shapes in Rhino with this tool. And looking at what is the difference between these things, and then we were super disappointed because these options were all different, but the results were kind of all the same. And then we thought, oh Lord, so what are we doing wrong? But it makes sense. These are all the same amount of square meters. They kind of use the same amounts of material, so the differences were minor. And that gave us the insight that it's not so much about the form that we should look at, but about how it's made and what it's made of. Meaning we need to get more control over that detail, that layer. And we couldn't do that in this plugin. So there we went. Let's make a platform, something that's online, something that is software agnostic, something that everybody can use, something that enables my mom to make a carbon calculation, maybe even enjoy it. And that is Carbon Space, so that's the tool that we developed. And it is online, and you can all access this for free. And we'll share the link at the end of the presentation as well. We have the software platform, and we also have a tutorial online, so we hope to get you all carbon spacing. Because honestly, most people think that carbon is quite a boring subject, but I completely fell in love with it, and it's fascinating. So it's an online tool. It looks like this. You can. It's a quantitative approach. So how this works is you collect quantities from your building. So how many floors above ground, floors below ground? What's the height? How many square meters of facade you have? Open, closed, basic quantities. And once you have those, you can start to see how this behaves. You can start to play with options. What does this building do if it's a complete timber building? What happens if I only do the floors in timber? What if I do clunky business as usual? Or what if I try to do some kind of lightweight concrete structure? It shows the differences. And of course, you can add options and scenarios here, but this shows how you can start to look at building systems and variations within. So you have control over how you make it and what you make it of. And it shows you your worst case scenario if you do business as usual on the right-hand side, and it shows what you can achieve if you do everything you can. So it shows the range, and it helps you where to look. When we started our journey, we were honestly a bit afraid because, you've seen in Nathalie's presentation that we do pretty wild architecture, and we like that. And then we thought, maybe this is the end of creativity, and maybe we can only make boring boxes. And to test that, because we have developed this tool, we looked at this building, which is a residential building with a cantilever. And we thought, okay, let's see how bad this cantilever is. Let's see, what is the impact? So we took this building, we completely took it apart and calculated the carbon impact of this building. And then we actually cut off this cantilever, put it on top, and just see what that did. And somehow the difference was 3%. Which is not a big drama. And then we thought, okay, 3%, maybe designing with carbon is like designing with money. You have one bag of money, and you will spend a bit more money on this cantilever, and you have one bag of carbon that you can spend once. And that means if you spend 3% on that, you need to save 3% elsewhere. And we did this for one cantilever, so we thought, let's do it for 100 cantilevers. So then we went to this building in Amsterdam, and we did the same exercise. Here is the original building, and we compared it to this shoebox that's next to it. It's, what is the difference between something that looks very expressive and 3 boring boxes on a podium? And it was, again, 3%. And we did this 150 times, and somehow it's always 3%. And we had all these things verified with engineers, and it gave us this insight that it's about understanding how to work with budgets within your building and how to balance and spend your carbon, actually. So we started to look for more impact, like where is the actual impact? Where are the heavy hitters? Some people think that you need a lot of information. Some people think you need all the screws and nails and door handles. So we compared a execution model to a sketch model. Difference is 3%, so also there you can say meaningful things about the carbon behavior of your project based on a sketch. You don't need all that information. Putting green on buildings, is this a big drama? In this case, we have lightweight planters on the slab edge. Nothing extra has been made, and the impact of the planters is less than 1%. Then we started to look at facade cladding. Is that bad? This is all natural stone. What's the carbon impact of that? So we replaced all of the natural stone with timber. It's a 1% difference. Even if you make the whole thing out of straw, still the difference is only 1%. And so this was our search for impact. Search for where should we look? How can we steer impactful? This is one of my favorite parts because people love talking about transportation of materials. And we know we went through 150 of our own buildings, from the foundation piles to the building maintenance units and the facade details and the floors, everything. So by this time we know pretty well how much everything weighs, how much of what we have in a building. So we know exactly what this building weighs, and we also know what the carbon emissions are of a truck, a train, and an ocean carrier. So we calculated that if we want to transport this entire building from Amsterdam to Rotterdam by truck, it's 2% of the carbon emissions. And that's transporting the entire building, which of course nobody will ever do. If we put the entire building on a train to Poland, 1,000 kilometers, then still it's 6% of the emissions. So it's not where the big impact is. This building is a built project in New York. This is a hotel. And it has these colors of the neighborhood, and it has very colorful glazed bricks. And we couldn't find this brick in this quality in the United States. So these bricks come from Spain. And I was fascinated by the fact that whenever I show this project and we talk about it, people always say, like, ooh, these bricks come from Spain. This is very unsustainable. So we calculated it. How unsustainable is this? We know the amount of bricks, the amount of tons of bricks that we had to transport, and the emissions of an ocean carrier, and it is 0.2% of the impact, but 95% of the discussions. And I love this because it shows that we don't have a calculation problem, we have a focus problem, because we don't know where to look. And by now we do know where to look, so this is a part of the exercise. This is my hobby, which is going through 150 of our own projects. These are all actual projects, they just have code names. And we learned a lot from this. You can see the world map right there, and this is constantly growing. This is live in our office. And yeah, we can see a couple interesting things. For example, Europe has relatively the lowest carbon footprint. Understandable, our buildings are smaller, we have EU climate law. We can see that Asia is actually the most concrete heavy, because also that's the way of building there. And the most interesting thing is we started to understand where our biggest impact lies, which is in structure. Nathalie already showed it. The biggest impact is in everything that is concrete: foundations, basements, floors, cores, beams, columns. That's where the biggest impact lies. And that's typically not where we look, because we like to talk about things that we see, like shape, materials, transportation. But the true impact is in the invisible. For example, parking, parking, parking. So can we do less parking? Can we do less undergrounds? We look at that. And as Nathalie showed, if we're doing parking above ground, you can in the future maybe transform it. Also, this project has above ground parking. Or maybe we can just look at how we can use less parking. Or in this project, an AI campus in Germany, the parking has its own building. And what is interesting here for us, this was a big learning moment because this building has two very carbon-intensive, this master plan has two very carbon-intensive buildings. One of them is a parking structure, the other is a data center. And what we learned here is to work with carbon in a master plan. And it kind of works the same. It works with one budget. You have one master plan budget. You can spend it once. And here we started to create synergies. So you know where your heavy hitters are. So you know you need to tread lightly around that and compensate the behavior of the heavy hitters with timber, lightweight, bio-based transformations. So we were looking for obvious correlations, behavior of carbon, so we might even be able to skip all of the calculations and the data altogether. And yeah, we asked ourselves, are our big projects always carbon heavy? Well, as you can see, this is kind of Jackson Pollock. It's all over the place. We couldn't find any correlations. Is our tall buildings necessarily carbon intensive? Also not. We have some lightweight tall buildings and actually some very clunky low-rise buildings. And then we found this, hallelujah, this undeniable correlation between the weight of your building and the embodied carbon emissions of your building. So Cedric Price, how much does your building weigh? We know exactly how heavy we are. And it makes sense if you think about it. This is just the amount of material that's in your building. And if you just try to use less material, then it's a very easy win. And this is something that everybody can use. You don't need software for this. You don't need tools for this. It's just about trying to use less material and build lighter. And how we are doing that. So we are on a weight loss journey ourselves. As Nathalie called it today, we're cutting the carbs. And yeah, we are on a weight loss journey, and that is how we lose weight is completely different per country, per project even. So here in Paris, we have our first mass timber housing project on top of an existing mall. As Nathalie showed, we are now developing our first timber tower, 70 meters tall, mass timber. And because of all of our work in the field of carbon, we met these guys, and these are the Zen mindfulness Buddhists of Plum Village, and these guys are now our clients. And they asked us, so the sisters, they live in the sister village, and they were homeless, their house burned down, and they asked us to realize something for them that is extremely sensitive with nature, very ecological, and that's what we did. They didn't have any internet, electricity, a very special collaboration, so we kind of lived in that village for months, and we developed for them a nunnery where 90 nuns will live in straw bale. And I'm super excited to share that this is what it looks like. And if you think of MVRDV, then you would definitely not think of this as an MVRDV. And it shows that we're also reinventing ourselves. We have to learn new things, we're trying new things, and this is also part of our journey. And this is an actual picture from 2 days ago on site, so it's actually happening in straw, which I think is super cool. I never thought we would be able to pull this off, and I thought at some point this is going to transform into concrete, because the French contractors will just say, I may know, but it's happening. I think it's crazy. I can't believe it still myself. That yeah, so things can happen. And well, we share our insights, our learnings with all of you, but also inside the office, try to get more attention to encourage the discourse. So we made this poster with carbon guidelines, and this is everywhere in our office. It's in all the different studios and is next to the coffee machine. And when I first was mounting these posters everywhere, our PR guy came to me and said, Sanne, what are you doing? You cannot show this because, look at number 0, rule number 0, do not build new. That is I said, you cannot, we're all like, you're putting us out of a job, we're architects, we have to build. So there was an interesting internal discussion, as you can imagine. But in the end, we're still here and it's still there, so we we had a good discussion and reached a common ground that we can say this. And and actually we are quite good at not building new, and we encourage everyone to not build new. Of course, one of my favorite projects, Expo 2000, actually is now being transformed into a student housing project, so it's getting a new life, which I think is beautiful. In Shenzhen in China, there was an economic boom in the 80s, 90s. A lot of buildings were built with a lifespan of 30 years, and then the idea was to just demolish, build something new. And this project here in Shenzhen was a tower that had been empty for many years, never really properly functioned. And we proposed to our client to not demolish it, but to transform it. Then it will only take you 1.5 years for your transformation to finish instead of 5. And we were able to transform this building from the left to the right in 1.5 years. And it shows that renovation and transformation can be beautiful, but it also shows that retaining the concrete structure of this building and not demolishing it is the carbon equivalent of 11,800 flights from Amsterdam to Shenzhen. So this is where the real impact lies. And that's why architects can have 196 times more impact to cut carbon through work than through lifestyles, according to the Architecture Journal. So, I mean, people, we can really have an impact together. And you can also not build in cities. This is a former parking garage of an old shopping mall in Tainan in Taiwan, and we transformed that into this urban oasis. So it shows that these things can scale to an urban level. Here we have a flyover in Seoul in South Korea. This was a flyover for traffic. The flyover was not able to support the traffic anymore. We turned it into this high line with all the plant species of South Korea. What is wonderful about this is it shows that placemaking also can have a value. The investment of this was 30 million euros, and the increase of the value of the real estate around it is 200 million euros. So next time I would ask these guys to pay for it. And it also shows that, this came into Time magazine, like this is a place to experience. So sustainability, it can, if you do it smartly, be a destination in itself. And from flyovers, that brings us to spaces underneath flyovers. This is a self-initiated project in India. This is the Burgh drain, a big open sewer. And we were dreaming of making it this inclusive eco corridor. It never happened, but we put it on our website, and then we got a phone call from a guy in Mumbai who said, hey, I have one of these things. Can you do this for me? And yeah, well, sure. When we transformed a space underneath the flyover into this kind of, what was it? It was a school, it was a gym, it was a library, it's everything. We won the Building of the Year Award 23 with this for landscape and public. It's not even a building, but it shows that there's a new interest in these things. And then we got a call from the governor of Bangkok who said, hey, I also have these things. Can you do something for me as well? And that's when we set up an AI installation in Bangkok, and we were consulting the community and asking them what their hopes and wishes and dreams are for their spaces underneath flyovers. So this is how we use AI, not to generate images, but to work with communities, learn together, and understand each other. And this was a complete hit, and the governor of Bangkok was happy. So how do these things scale further? We actually now are working with the city of Bangkok, with their digital twin, on understanding flood risks and resiliency. And what we are doing here is, we were able to create a common language for carbon, and our next step is to create a common language for resiliency, where we have an analytical stack where we can look at where are the risks, the runoffs, the distance to green, heat risk index, but for the first time also link that to urban form. So what kind of urban forms do we find? The high rises, the low rises, the riverfronts, and what is most likely to happen where? And this prediction of risk is something that we now do as well with other cities. So for the city of Rotterdam, we are doing a project also based on digital twins and the data maps of the city, using all of the city's rooftops together. And what we're doing here is we developed a tool and a method to assess all of the city's roofs. What are they suitable for? What can we use them for? How much energy can we generate? How much green, what can we add? How many square meters of housing can we add to the stock supply? And this started as a small project, and it has now scaled up to 6 sister cities. And within Europe, we have a €6.5 million subsidy from the EU. So these things scale, and I find that super exciting to see. And we're also now becoming the carbon consultants of the city of Rotterdam. So if there's anyone from the city of Toronto here, talk to me, because we can do these things together, and this is super exciting. And it shows that you can do this carbon budgeting on a city scale level. Last part, so I told you that we are sharing our insights and learnings with a traveling exhibition showing our learnings, our trials, tribulations, things that work, things that don't work. We started in Munich, we went to Paris. This is the Paris show. We were in Taiwan for a brief while, and this was the Rotterdam version. It got a lot of attention that people are sharing their insights, but also people are sharing the things that don't work. And this radical honesty got a lot of attention. We even made it to the 8 o'clock news, which was super cool to see. And what I think is the most interesting is that we had the world's first carbon election debate during this exhibition. So political parties were defending their climate agendas. And that brings us back to here now, Toronto, green standard, I love it. But I also understand that it's quite challenging at the moment politically. But I'm just fascinated by the fact that you have this tier system and it says, oh, tier 350 kilos. But what does that mean? If you're an architect, you have to design something that is below 350 kilos for your skin and structure. And I ask a lot of people, like, do you know what that means? How do you design with that? And I don't know, out of curiosity, I just did a deep dive into our carbon city, and I found that we have 7 buildings that meet the Toronto Green Standard. So just to be curious to have a look at those. So obviously this transformation is a TGS proof. Also, this mass timber tower is TGS proof, but you can't do mass timber towers everywhere. We typically don't have the budget for those. Also, the timber hybrids are TGS proof. And this was my biggest surprise. I didn't believe it. I triple-checked this, but this mega building in India, 1,000 units, is also Toronto Green Standard proof. And how is that possible? Such a big building is so low in carbon. It's in India, it has relatively thin floors, small spans. The facade is only 10 centimeters of concrete with paint, no cladding. But the biggest, it has 9 slabs with only 4 cores, so it's also efficient in its operations. But the biggest trick here is that this is sitting on bedrock, so it has no foundation, just a light footing. And this is something that I would love that we can congratulate ourselves with, but we can't congratulate ourselves with this. This is just context. And this shows that carbon doesn't have a face. Carbon is very dependent on where you're building, what you're building. And that's why we're also using this to steer away from discussions about is something good or is something bad, and rather to see where it is in the world, what is the context, what are the conditions, and how can we see what works where and what makes sense. We use all of this information to steer on our climate goals. We are, again, on a weight loss journey. We need to lose 3 kilos of carbon per month for the coming 4 years to achieve our climate goals. We don't know if we're going to make it. We're honest about it, but we hope. And at least we know where to look and how to steer. And this is very exciting, and I'm also very happy to share this, that we talk about this worldwide. And through this, we actually came in touch with the CVU, the Council on Vertical Urbanism. This is the world's largest high-rise organization. And these guys are actually here. And we became their executive sustainability partner. So we are now collaborating together with the CVU on what I think is an extremely interesting project, which is, can we get insights in the behavior of tall buildings worldwide? And we have started that project now, which is we are asking developers and engineers to share their data with us. And this is wild, because our industry is driven by competition and secrecy and proprietary tools and data. And to ask very big developers and engineers to share their data, and the fact that they are interested and willing to do that, is really a tipping point in our entire culture of collaboration. So very exciting. We have started the data acquisition process, and well, this is 17 projects. This shows we definitely need more data to say anything meaningful about this. So we're on our way with this, and together with Will and CVU, taking a next step in scaling impact and understanding how, as an industry, we can be better and understand what works, but specifically what doesn't work and how we can address that, with the ultimate goal to create a global carbon community of openness and sharing and learning together. And with that, I have achieved, I've reached the end of my talk. So carbon guidelines is the first QR, carbon space tutorial is the second QR, and carbon space itself is the third QR code. And yeah, it's been a joy to share this with you guys. Hope you find this interesting, that you can do something with it. And I would like to invite Alex to the stage for moderating this, and Nathalie.
Maybe you
and I will fix the
make the
stage.
configuration. Yeah, where shall you sit? Yeah, so that got a bit out of hand. This question to Sanne. Yeah, you want to? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Everybody's still here.
Everybody's still here? Yeah, but they have to.
Yeah, have to. We should have said no points until you use the tool first.
Oh,
yeah.
Can we still change that?
Have some discussions with the OAA.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see such a crowd here. And I think this venue actually works out very well in some ways for the conversation, right? Because this building has been here since 1875 and was a religious college. It's been a hospital. It's been a site of medical research. It has been the office of the university's parking garage or parking office. A lot of things. This building has had many lives, and it's still serving us well. I wanted to pull out one of the lessons that you mentioned from your carbon journey in the text for the exhibition, and that is, I'll read this briefly, the role of the architect is evolving. Architects are no longer just designers. We are becoming transdisciplinary moderators, data curators, and strategists, shaping the future by interpreting and interweaving the systems that make the built environment. So that is an interesting kind of opening statement, and I think, Sanne, you went some distance to explaining what that means. But where does all of this work, and how does all of this work and thinking intersect with design? Is your practice moving away from the work of design as you used to think about it? And if that's the case, what does that mean for other architects?
Yeah, if you look at somehow the history of MVRDV is that we actually look for things that are the impossibilities or the problems or the things that block us, and then we try to master those so we can actually do something with it. And what we saw in our practice is that traditionally architects have been giving away a lot of things. Like, we give that the structure goes to the structural engineer, and then the facade goes to the facade engineer, because buildings become more and more complex. And then we have sustainability consultants that do all of the sustainability. And what did that leave us with? We are sitting there and we make a design, and then somehow everything that decides how this building behaves is in the hands of others. And then what happens, this happens in all practices everywhere. The way of collaborating is you make a design, you send it to all of your engineers, you wait 2 weeks, you get something back. You either have no idea what it means, or it says that you are 3 times over budget, and then you have to try and integrate that back into your design. So the way of collaborating currently is it's really true. It's super old-fashioned, and this is how we currently work today. And what we wanted to do is to integrate sustainability back into design, rather than have somebody else do it and tell us what to fix, it being an afterthought. We wanted to be the people that can actually push the buttons and design with this stuff, not integrate it, but make it a driver. And this is where we had to learn completely again how to master these skills and to be emancipated. And I think this really helped us to grow the confidence. We can challenge our consultants now, and this is really true because we know where to look. We know that, hey, dudes, this is the floors, and this looks quite heavy. We are having design discussions about foundations now with our structural engineers. So it helped us to grow confidence, to have better discussions with our consultants with our clients and to challenge them. So we had to go through this in order to gain back control and integrate design and sustainability.
Yeah, is that an answer? Yeah, no, I think, I mean, the origin of the question was, why don't we understand ourselves anymore? Why we are building what we are building, right? So ultimately, the idea was to keep our work and not to lose it. Are we consultants as well now? That's actually a question we discussed. That's interesting. I think we are also urbanists, so I think that's maybe has partly to do with it that we stay fascinated by it as well, because we also want to create conditions under which we can make good buildings together, and we want this conversation with our colleagues as well. So I think that's the point where we also get fascinated by these tools that we are creating, and like I said, for a lot of things, and especially in urban design, predicting the future, you want to work with options and you want to share knowledge. But no, ultimately what we wanted to do is to keep on making buildings, but to also understand what we are building and why we are building it. Yeah, and stay relevant somehow.
And stay relevant, and I guess don't let the engineers take all the power away, right?
Yeah, if you need a consultant for everything, but it also was like, okay, we always went on this journey to achieve one of the numbers of these, all these certifications that you were seeing.
Checking the boxes.
That's where it already gets a bit weird, right? So, and then halfway on the way, we would have a discussion, like say, made a definitive design, cost calculation comes in place, and it's like, yeah, well, maybe not this time. So sometimes the client didn't mind so much. We were on the way, and can't turn that back anymore. It all felt a bit silly to some degree. It's like, why can we not be in control more? And we just start to make clever designs. Some people would say maybe, isn't that just common sense that you should be using here? Yes and no. But also, now I do actually, after we started to get these insights, indeed we talk about foundations, the weight of buildings. Natural stone versus some composite material is suddenly not just an aesthetical question or what the city architect thinks about it, I fought against above ground car parks large part of my life. Now I'm actually promoting them sometimes. So the discussion about hybrid structures, like Sanne says, it's not only anymore about the appearances or the things we always thought were the things we should used to be doing. So it did change a lot. That's why I call it the material paradigm shift. Yep. That's also how I talk about it with students. But also realizing there's still a lot of parallel concepts. Is circular better? Reuse in the far future? Flexibility? There's all these concepts together. There's all kinds of different concepts. They have different expressions even. Yes. What I know about all of those, I have to make the decision very early on in the process. So again, these tools help us. But yeah, and we also add other things. Like one of my colleagues at TU said, the lifespan of a building. So it's like, how should one of the students asked him in the lecture, like, should I use timber? Should I use steel? He said, how long should your building be standing? It's like, okay, that's a student. Anyway, difficult. Very hypothetical question, of course. I said, 7 years. Oh, then, well. So we're having really different conversations with each other. And we're also, these are steering us also in decisions early on.
Well, and it's interesting, I had some of the material in the presentation, Sanne's presentation was new to me, and I find it really interesting what you have done in trying to cut to the heart of these questions, right? Because the numbers are overwhelming, the certifications are overwhelming, and those of you who are architects, most of you, I think, didn't get into architecture because you like doing spreadsheets or entering data, right? I mean, I don't either. No. God forbid. But you've we're trying to settle what are the most important questions and what are the most important choices that one can make, right? And to make those decisions drive the design. And so you mentioned one that's very clear, right? Concrete, essentially. Concrete is bad for the most part, and I'm sure the concrete industry would like to argue with this, but this is a relatively straightforward point that you're making here, where possible, and avoid underground structure as much as possible. What are some of the other simple moves or more straightforward ideas that you bring into the design process, as well as that?
Well, concrete is not always bad, actually.
Well, interesting discussion. Oh,
Yeah.
I have a lot of...
Fully concrete is maybe not always a good idea.
But let's talk about concrete. I love talking about concrete. So
There you go.
yeah, concrete is made by, let's say, barbecuing clay and limestone at 1450 degrees Celsius, and it needs fossil fuels, and the process itself releases CO2. And that's why it's one of the heavy hitters together with steel. And then there are these things like sustainable concrete, which sounds fantastic. It's like the silver bullet, right? I have sustainable concrete. But it's made with byproducts from the steel industry. So in a way, clean concrete requires dirty steel. And at the same time, we're scaling down the steel industry. So there is this, and if everybody would use sustainable concrete tomorrow, because it relies on a byproduct, the world supply would be depleted tomorrow. So it shows the lack of scalability of concrete, and now there are other techniques. For example, there's now carbon capture storage concrete, where there's basically, in Norway, they have a plant now in Brevik. I've been there. They basically have a cement plant, and there is a €3 billion vacuum cleaner on top of the chimney, and this is a slurp out the carbon, and it's compressed, liquefied, it goes into tanks, the tanks goes into boats, the boats go 700 kilometers up the coast of Norway, and then
this doesn't sound like something that will scale.
It's 3 times as expensive as regular concrete, so there are solutions, but they're all not scalable so far. So this is one of the big challenges, and that's why we always also say, even just look at floors, floor slabs. Our business as usual is a reinforced concrete slab, and that's where you have typically a lot of quantities of, and just using a hollow core slab or a ribbed slab, that already can cut up to 30-40% just by using different types of floors. And that's also challenging because MEP guys, so the guys that do all the piping, they don't like that because they have to think ahead about where to put all these pipes. And then you run into these weird collaborations across the chain where people have different incentives to do or not do certain things.
Yeah, like in the Netherlands, we love to build with concrete. Like most of our
we love
builders are,
it's fast,
the
it's
whole
cheap.
trade is based on concrete.
It's fast and cheap.
So yeah, well, you have to think twice now. You have to think how much are you going to use. And sometimes it can be very usable or more efficient. We still have to deal with costs, of course. We have a housing crisis as well. Just to say it's bad is complicated. It's complicated.
They're always competing.
It's nice to look at. Sometimes it's really nice as well.
Yeah, indeed. So they're always competing incentives.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I guess one obvious question here is, how much power do you have to make these decisions, right? I mean, in many cases, when the architect is hired, the program is set, the basic spatial decisions maybe have already been made, and you may have opinions about the structural system, but as architects, how much power do you have to try and enforce the agenda and bring these understandings into the project? And where you don't have power, what do you do about it?
Well, knowledge gives power, so that means we are much more informed now when we have discussions about how to make the building. I think in the Netherlands there are several offices that are investigating carbon, because we have all these weird and very strict rules as well. We want to be in control. We also have friends who investigate carbon in relationship to and wooden structures in relationship to why does it cost so much, or maybe it doesn't have to cost so much. And the thing is that we are discovering that we can, when we help each other and we share all this information with each other, we get more power. actually, because if all the architects in the Netherlands start to do the same, say the same things to their clients, things start to happen. I have also friends who have organized a course in, first we learn one person in each office the basics of this stuff about building in wood. And we also give the course how to have a discussion with your client if they want to turn the wooden structure back into, for example, concrete. And this is stuff that we're actually doing, and this is actually, we're sharing the knowledge, and by actually multiplying it, and multiplying this discussion, so not just hearing it from one architect, you're hearing it from the other as well. So we help each other out here.
The TSA folks paying attention here? You guys getting some ideas? Yes, I'm sure you are. That's great.
Yeah, so we're laughing here, but no, I think we are professionals, so we have to understand what we are doing, and that was indeed what we realized, that we lost our knowledge somehow, because we weren't aware that we should be focusing on that much more.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about a specific project, the medical science building here, which is just across the campus. Can you tell us a little bit, I've seen more than most people, but I think the project is still unfamiliar to people here. How have some of these subjects that you've been speaking about tonight gone into that design? Has that design been shaped by these practices?
Well, we learned that it is complicated to make lab buildings that are not made of concrete. So moving structures are not so good for lab build. If your building moves too much, that's not so good for your experiments and your labs. It's heavy investment. So we know the buildings will stay for a long time. The use of timber in Canada, it's remarkably enough, not so easy yet, which was a big surprise to me. I'm like, I'm going to Canada. Well, yeah. Okay. Yes. But
when we use mass timber, sometimes we import it from Austria.
I think, the building at Scarborough campus, I think we focus there very much also on this, on the facade and on the organization and flexibility of the building. And I think we really tried very much to make a very efficient, lightweight, energy producing facades there. But that's also why I gave this very, very long introduction, because I think all these other aspects are still have value as well. So we don't give that away. Also, we just add this on top of it. But
right, your job is not to make emissions disappear, right? That's not your job.
I'm making buildings. My job is making buildings.
Okay,
Yeah.
So the medical science project, there is a significant use of mass timber around the edges, right? The main structure is concrete, but
It's mostly cladding, but we also want to use timber there. Yeah.
So you're saying this was a really hard project from this point of view, then?
Yeah,
basically.
it was. Yeah, but we're still working on it.
You're working on it. Okay, so how does one make a wet lab building? What are the specific sort of characteristics of a lab building, and can you make that space flexible? Can lab space be potentially repurposed into something else?
Well, there's floors, ceilings, columns. It's extra height, yes. But I think there it is of course about a clever organization of the installations, and that they can be handled and changed over time, and that the layout is flexible. Yes, that's possible. Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about fairly small things, but sort of in keeping with the sort of the spirit of cutting to the chase, as you said. I think about what's happening outside the building, and I think about, particularly in a North American context. You talked about Sanne talked about transportation. A lot of emissions come from transportation, and in North America, almost everything happens by car, and our cities are and continue to be very spread out. So, are we missing, in focusing on all of this, are we missing more important things or equally important questions at the urban scale? I mean, should you as architects be trying to intervene, or should architects as a profession be trying to think about that bigger question? Is that where our attention should be as well, or instead of focusing on the details of the structure?
Oh, I think this is Thank you for this question. And of course, what you see is we've been looking for a long time at the individual buildings and the individual plots. And the exciting things start to become obvious when you zoom out into the neighborhood or the district or the city. And then you start to see the behavior of a city. And for example, what we see in the city of Rotterdam now in the Netherlands, and this is actually happening, urban development is blocked, not because of carbon emissions, but because of we are the solar kings of the world in the Netherlands. So nobody has more solar panels on their roofs than the Dutch. And as a result of that, the electricity, the net, the grid, it's super congested because we have these peak loads and then dips, and this is currently what's happening. And it's super interesting that we choose so much energy that the grid is congested. You cannot get a new connection in the city at this moment. And what you start to see then is that the need to create synergies. So we need to make neighborhood batteries, basically. So you need to mix working with living, so you can balance out the energy needs and supply and demand. And the same goes for embodied carbon. And that's why I'm so excited about the project we're doing with CVU to collect carbon data of all different types of buildings, so we can finally nuance this discussion about densification. Right, because should we build like a couple of 500-meter tall towers just around the central station, or do we do 200-meter towers and a bit more spread out, or this is it? You know, what is the nuance in this carpet of urban sprawl to super tall? Oh, that sounds like urban sprawl to super tall. Well, we have to work with it. So where are the tipping points? If you look at mobility and then densification. Where are the multipliers? So what makes sense? And I think by looking at these large data sets, we can start to learn, let's say, the amount of units per building, and that gives you information as a city on how to steer your carbon budget. Because in a way, every country has a carbon budget, every city has a carbon budget, and how to disperse that budget.
Actually, in Canada, we're rethinking that a little bit these days.
I heard something about that.
Wouldn't be so sure.
But I think it's interesting that I see more and more cities across Europe, for example, making high-rise policies. And often part of it is how to become more agreeable, because how can we convince ourselves to live in apartments, for example?
How do you make high-rise more attractive?
How do you make it more attractive? So that's important. And secondly, I know also Dutch cities start to make inventories of, hey, we have already a public transport system, there are stations there, transit-oriented design. And then they say, well, a lot of cities are like, don't overdo it, don't build too tall. There's actually now, even in cities like Amsterdam, they start to say like, hey, there's a station there. We don't accept a low building there, or we want there. That's our spots for densification. So I think it's part of the same way of thinking, of using your resources in the best possible
using
way.
resources efficiently,
efficiently
and systematically. This is interesting because transit-oriented development is something that very much exists here in policy terms, and it's always oriented around transit. And we can talk about how those communities are executed. But one thing I find interesting, and I've been working on this, is that other forms of infrastructure don't provide that kind of lens. There's no, to take a fairly visible thing, the biggest public school system here has a lot of empty rooms, has a lot of empty capacity. And there are large areas of Toronto, this city, that have empty classrooms and have hard infrastructure that is used much less intensively than it used to be, because the population is much lower in certain places than it used to be. But this is the kind of thinking that we don't do in policy terms.
Yeah, to look at what is already there. Yeah. So also university buildings in cities. I've also been a city architect for a while as a consultant. A beautiful inner city, lots of university building, nothing going on there. They finally decided to change a very ugly, outdated building and transform it. And I said to them, what can we do with your ground floors? Because they're empty in the evenings and the weekends, and they agreed to think about reprogramming it in such a way, to organize the buildings in such a way that they could also have double uses. So
that the lobbies of the ground floors
yeah,
are not empty.
You can have ateliers or courses or evening schools or yeah.
I mean, which is also interesting, right?
Yeah.
And is in line with the
Yeah.
sort of ethic of the hybridity that you guys have always been.
Yeah, but it's a complicated discussion, because then suddenly, as a university with your real estate, you have to think very differently. It's complicated. No, you have volunteers here helping people to find the toilet, but also not to. It's a different way of thinking, and yeah. And what we can do as architects, we can talk to our clients about that. It is an interesting thing.
You have suggestions.
Yeah, use your roofs. Look at different ways at the ground floors. Add public spaces or semi-public spaces.
Interesting to think, not just in terms of time, but in terms of space. I love that. We're going to go to some questions in the room. Do we have a mic already floating around? Okay, questions. Start over here. Hi. Wait, mic's coming to you. Hey.
Hi, my name is Sarah Sabunyan, a big fan. I traveled 8 years ago to Rotterdam and Amsterdam to just see MVRDV buildings.
Oh.
And I did sustainable architecture and green infrastructure planning. And I do research and teaching about sustainability. As much as I love architecture, I like the science side of that. And always there's this question how we can communicate, how we can collaborate with different sectors in sustainability. As you said, it's very vague. It's very like multidisciplinary. So we have like ecologists, we have transportation planning. And somehow when we have these like great architectures, when we come up with the actually designers and planners, you may hear from them, we didn't even talk before the design of the project. As you say, we have the design and we send it to engineers and like planners. And so as this amazing new approach in sustainability, in this level of great architecture, how do you actually approach this collaboration, this knowledge transfer between very different sectors? Even in like universities, planning and architecture departments don't communicate well. Like this, the communication that is very vital for sustainability in your office and your buildings. Thanks so very much.
Oh,
Thank you.
that was not a question, or was it? Yeah. Oh, how do you communicate?
How do we share this?
Well,
How do you translate these insights to people in other fields?
No, I know, yeah. Even for me, it was sometimes confusing. So I'm teaching as well. So I'm at a university, surrounded by real experts. Like we have this sort of people who know much more than I do. And I'm asking this guy, like, circular building. I suddenly saw some, in the magazines and in the newspaper, that blah, blah, blah was able to make a fully circular building. And I'm like asking him, like, what is that? I know, does that even exist? And he tells me, like, no. There's no fully circular building made yet in the Netherlands. So I don't know. We make ourselves crazy with all these concepts. And we also have to understand that there are even agendas behind all these different types of circularity and sustainability concepts. So I think what is interesting about what I didn't realize maybe really in advance when I asked the question, for example, to Sanne, who's basically our data and digital design expert, right? That actually approaching it in a bit more scientific way was going to help us. So, but then again, so a lot of these sustainability concepts sort of at some point, now even Sanne has even entered a Buddhist
Oh yes,
zone.
I became a Buddhist
You
sister.
somehow feel that at some point you get into a sort of Ram family zone in a certain group of sustainability. We had William McDonnell. What was the concept again of?
Afterwards?
McDonnell and well, anyway, you end up in certain conceptual worlds, and then you're there in that corner. So.
And you don't want to be in the corner.
I don't want to be.
You don't want to be in the corner.
We don't want to make a choice. So we don't go for fully. I have colleagues who go for only reuse and recycling. I have colleagues who go for only wood. We have colleagues who go for fully circular. But yeah, we want to have we don't want to go there yet.
I think that's fair.
But
Next
I
question.
mean, is that an answer to your question?
or maybe,
I
how
think
do we
that's a
share?
bit the issue. Like
Down the-
before we go into a certain direction, and take it as a religion, we don't want that.
Thank you for your presentations and for the thank you for the presentation. It was great to hear. I have a question about heat. So I know that, if I understood correctly, I think you've kind of discussed that the carbon that it's related to performance and kind of gets, it's kind of like carbon that looks, 30, 40 years to the future. That's maybe, I don't know if it's less important, as I understood as you said it, but that we should also look at the one that happens now. I think, as we all know, like one of the main things about climate change is heat. And recently it was a stat came out that the UK doubled its homes with air conditioning and since the past 3 years. So how does heat come into your calculations? And in general, I think how should architects look at heat from a perspective of, human decency of like being able to live in homes that are comfortable, but also just in the sense of like the energy use. Thank you.
Yeah,
We we can both answer it maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll keep it
So
short.
for me, it is. I'm looking differently at glass now. So we have different types of glass, of course, but let's say it's a more average building. We are already often reducing our window sizes now. So definitely. I also in the 90s made buildings when when I started my profession, energy was the big obsession. So the idea was then that you had houses, and you had some kind of recirculation system. The buildings were sealed. The client said, "Oh, great! If you open a window, that messes the system. So don't make too much openable windows." Yes, I did that. Yeah. Yeah, I believed that actually as well. But it was all based on the fact that there were only so little really hot days in the Netherlands per year that it was like, you could ignore that. Now you can't. Now you can.
Yep.
And I'm like, since I know that since some years now, I refuse to make buildings that don't have good openable windows. I even smuggle openable stuff into office buildings that are fully air conditioned, which was a good thing during the COVID time, by the way. And so I'm like, I was like, what was I thinking? Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right, but there's something called natural ventilation. Yeah. That I even have a bit of a problem with some of the apartment buildings, of course, if you can have cross ventilation or corner windows, or that's an interesting discussion we could have with each other. How do we ventilate building? Can we keep on relying on energy sources to cool and heat our buildings? I think you open a new box of Pandora, and but I see that it's still a challenge for us. What did you want to say about this? But so prevent overheating is indeed interesting. Again, some of the architects in the audience might think I've been doing that all my life, so okay.
Yeah. So indeed, it's as you say. If you look at the world, on a global level, we have this problem of global warming, and it has different effects on different parts of the world.
But the Netherlands, the climate is already changed.
Basically, areas are going
in 20,
to be
30 years from the past to now. And we still work with old building codes and regulations.
Yes, so if you zoom out, then things are either going to be too hot or too cold or too wet or too dry. One of those four, essentially. And we need to prepare our buildings, our cities for all of those. And this is what we're trying to do now also with the work in resiliency in Bangkok. Is different parts of cities need different things. High rises at night, they form these kind of radiators. You get these heat canyons. On low rises, you see that's much more about the roofs or how to prepare for these things. So heat is definitely one of the things that we need to prepare for. I recently saw a guy that had an ice battery. Sounded super interesting. It's kind of, again, in the neighborhood battery thing. Because in a way, energy, we don't have so much an energy generation problem as well as an energy storage problem. Where do we store all this energy? You can store it in gravity or in heat or in cold. So, sounds interesting. But in the end, it's very much, as you say, also about the culture of comfort. And what level of comfort are we willing to accept? And we are still working for very strict German clients that they say that it has to be 21 degrees all day, every day, year round. And what we also will see is that culturally we will start to have to accept ranges in comfort. So it's it comes from a lot of different sides.
We have to cool down our city, so we have to actively promote greening roofs, removing hard surfaces. We also have to bring the temperature in our cities down, because we have temperature and we have the temperature in the city, which is usually much higher. So that is also something that you can start to control and mitigate and work on. So.
Well, call the landscape architects. Next question. Who do we have next? I'm going to start on the aisle back there, maybe? Thanks. Yes. Hi.
Hello. Thank you both for the presentation. My question kind of corresponds to Alex's initial question on how much of this is in the architect's control. We kind of looked at it for a second in your presentation with I believe it was the building in Mumbai. For a place like Ontario or like major North American cities, the double-loaded corridor or the two means of egress probably would have a lot of sway if, like what I took away from your presentation is the structure is so critical to the final quantity and number. And if that's the case, then the building regulations are like, they almost establish how much is going to come out. So that becomes what when you had showed a graph of showing North America versus East Asia and Europe, how those different countries kind of par up with each other, that probably becomes much more paramount. So I guess, how do you, if the goal is at some point to get like a common denominator between these metrics, how do you balance between ideas of safety across different like geopolitical regions and sustainability? So you're referring mostly to double-loaded corridors, second egress rules, this kind of thing? Yeah, like we need two means of egress minimum and, like that. So the implications of different code approaches or regulatory approaches with respect to emissions, that's what you're curious about? Okay.
So. Well, we're not going to solve the climate crisis with less egress stairs, so this is non-negotiable. I think there is. Well, but there's an impact, right? I mean, it's. I would say the impact of egress stairs is relatively small, but what I find super interesting about, of course, our buildings have to be safe. This is like without a doubt. But what is very interesting about your question is again. What is our power? What is our influence that we have as architects, right? And on an individual building scale, it can be really frustrating to run into your client or your engineer and to just get to hear the message that we cannot do this because it's too expensive or the rules don't allow it. And this happens a lot, and as an architect, you don't have that much power. It really depends on how holistic your clients are. But as architects, we do have power through, again, what we're doing with CVU is showing the impact of what we're doing and mapping that out systemically. And by that, we can start to see what the impact is of systems choices, of early systems choices. We can see the patterns, and that enables us to, and this is my favorite part of all, we are the people that have to follow policy. Right? We have to follow the law. We have to follow the rules, regulations. Sometimes they don't make any sense because we're the people that follow policy that has been made by policymakers. And they make this policy, but based on what? And by this mass data exercise that we're doing together, we're going to change the law. And this is what's going to happen. We are going to make these things insightful. We're going to build the world's largest, most informed building carbon database. And this database will inform future policy, and that's where our impact lies. So I can't wait to change the law with this.
Well, there are architects here who are advocating for single stair reform, right? To allow for point access blocks, which allows for more efficient floor plans, cross ventilation. This is happening. Next question. Who has a question? We got room for a couple more. Okay. Yep.
Hi. So in new buildings today, we include a lot more technology in terms of sensors, wiring, climate and lighting control. My question is, are we paying enough attention to the carbon footprint of the increased use of ICT, which is increasing both in physical volume and in dollar value of the buildings?
If you look at the energy consumption of a building, of course, depends if I assume you're talking about offices. But if you look at the energy consumption pattern of offices, most energy goes to cooling. And that's where the big impact lies. And of course, things like lighting, they become more and more efficient now with LED technologies. And the actual impact of appliances is very little on the whole operational footprint of an office building. What we do see is that within the industry, business as usual in installations, in heating, cooling is still very much like we fill it with plenty of pipes, so everything is in this comfort zone, this very limited comfort zone. So there are things that we can change there, but they're very much related to culture and habit and how willing people are to accept change. But in terms of appliances within a building, it's negligible what the impact is of that energy consumption. Of course, it's a whole different story if you scale it to, AI and the energy consumption of that. But I assume you're not talking about that.
Yeah. So overall, you just want to stay focused on the things that matter the most.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It gets really complicated, of course, because is it renewable energy or not, for example? So it's kind of this techno-optimist versus probably have to burn more coals to get the energy.
But at some point you need to make a decision and design a building, right?
Yeah, well, I think most architects know nothing ages as fast as technology. So whatever you do, make sure that it's somehow removable or transformable or, we have one of our first ever buildings had a good old plenum, like a hollow floor. Not so bad, actually, because they just changed the the machines, and they plugged it in again, and it started working again. So I think that's, if you don't know, that's also something then that you know, what you don't know. So that means also maybe it's good for now, but not in the future. So taking out openable windows that are openable is a silly idea, actually, because it's very hard to change that.
Right. Okay, so be humble, everyone. This is the message. I think it's time to wrap up. So everyone, please join me in thanking our guests, Nathalie, Sanne.
Yeah.
Joel, do you want to close us off? Well.
Thank you.
All right. One final clap for this amazing panel.
Thank you, Alex.
Great job, Alex, of moderating.
Thank you. This was fun.
So I think lots of more opportunities for collaboration here across the ocean, and we'll make sure to continue to do that. But I wouldn't worry wearing my TSA hat not to remind you that those changes in policies. Most of us in this room, there's a lot of architects here. Don't forget you're also a citizen, and you vote and you talk to your councillors and your members of provincial parliament. And maybe more of us should be talking about the importance of not dropping our sustainability standards.
Yes, go vote.
And if you would like to watch this again, have people who should see it, thankfully this is all being recorded and it will be available for you. So very soon we'll send out that link. And if you want to see actually, a lot of similarities in a lot of those base rules are in the Future Ready Design Guide, which was a free resource we put out earlier this year in a Toronto context. So explore it, more there to learn, and tailored to Toronto and what we have learned locally. So have a great night, everyone, and let's continue the discussions.
Thank you.